This episode of the Dicebreaker podcast is sponsored by eBay. Level up your trading card game selling with eBay's new image scanning tool. Sellers can now scan their trading cards and create a listing in half the time. The new selling tool supports Magic the Gathering, Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and coming soon, sports trading cards and other collectible card games. It's an easy 3-step process. Simply open your eBay app, go to Selling, and search for your card category. Use the new image tool to snap a photo and enter in other details like condition and price. Hit list your item and you're done. It's a snap. Get the eBay app now on iOS or Android, list your Magic the Gathering, Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and start making money on your collections. To learn more, visit ebay.com/scan to list. Link in the description below. Hello everyone and welcome back to this 81st episode of the Dicebreaker podcast. We have two dancing heads in Alex Meehan and Chase Carter joining us. Alex Meehan, how are you doing? Welcome back to the Dicebreaker podcast.
I'm alright, thanks. I hope I'm more than a head.
Yeah, well, you got some shoulders as well. What's with the bobbing? What's going on?
It's just that song that plays with the advert is really groovy. I don't know if Chase could hear it or whether you were just dancing along with me because you're like, oh, I'll do it as well. Peer pressure.
I can't hear I just see like a little thing that says how far along the video is. So I had absolutely no enjoyable pop music to dance around to.
So what do you think we were doing then? We were just messing with you.
I thought maybe there was like a sort of spooky, scary skeletons playing in your head or something. Because it's the Halloween episode, baby.
It is the Halloween episode.
Baby.
Hello, Chase.
We are joined by
spooks.
By sort of special guest, Chase Carter. He's been on a few times now. You all know Chase.
Yeah, I'm sort of special.
How you doing, my friend?
Pretty good. I'm going to have a coffee coming in from my partner in a little bit, which is going to make this morning so much better.
Yeah, what time is it?
Oh, yeah, it's very spookily, like a spirit will just sort of geist it over to me. Yeah.
What time is it where you are?
It is just now 8:02.
Oof.
In the morn.
Oof. Chase has been working for several hours.
Goodness gracious.
Our wonderful friend Chase here wakes up way too early in the morning. So then you can work with myself and Mr. Jarvis on the website.
Work.
Yeah.
These British taskmasters are they are punishing.
I
sorry, carry on.
Hire someone personally to go into Chase's bedroom in the morning, wake him up with a big air horn.
Yeah, they've got cowbell and like one of those big like stadium air horns, and they're just like making a ruckus.
They've got like strobe lights flying in your face.
Yeah.
I mean
it's quite pleasant by this point.
Yeah. I am, of course, Michael Wheels Whelan, your temporary host as we wait for Matt Jarvis to return from...
The most ghoulish member of the team.
We are here for the Halloween episode, the Halloween special of the Dicebreaker podcast.
Dicebreaker Halloween special.
Exactly. We've got our costumes on. I'm dressed as Wheels.
That's pretty scary.
Me and who are you dressed as?
I'm dressed as Mary Elizabeth Winstead, which is someone I went to this is a very long and confusing story, but I went to
sounds like you, yeah.
Yeah. I went to a New Year's party once that a friend was hosting, and their brother was like convinced that I was Mary Elizabeth Winstead, who is like an actor who you might know from oh my gosh, why can't I remember the name? Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Oh, who is she in Scott?
She plays the main love interests, who I can't remember the name of.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So apparently this guy was like, you look exactly like her. And I was like, I don't even know who this is.
Really?
I know. And then the whole night, all he would ever say to me, and then he didn't like, my friend told him my name, but he never ever referred to me by my actual name. He only, at one point from across the garden, he pointed and said, "Hello, Mary."
What?
It was very weird.
How drunk was this man?
I don't know. But
okay.
He did put fireworks. He had fireworks. This was a firework party, and he lit them by placing them in just the grass, like the mud.
I thought you were going to go. I thought you were going to say butt. I feel like Chase was also the same the same expectation there. I thought he put some fireworks in his butt because that is.
No,
I grew up in the
no.
country. I know where this goes.
Mm-hmm.
No, he put them in the. He just stuck them in the mud. Was like, that will do, and then lit them. And I kid you not, when they went, they just sort of flew out of the ground at various points and exploded. And we were genuinely frightened for our lives at that point. So there you go. That's I told you it was a long, convoluted story. Chase, what are you dressed as?
I'm dressed as a disheveled college student who only shops at Target. I've got like my Target in 64 hoodie on.
Nice.
Yeah, that's about it. So I'm dressed as
a. Got like a Pulp Fiction poster on your wall.
Oh,
yeah, and I've got a copy of like some Chuck Palahniuk novels over here on the side. I've got Fight Club in the DVD player ready to go after this.
Ready to roll.
Oh yeah.
Like no joke, I was that person in college, and I'm so glad that he's dead and gone.
You murdered him.
He's been thrust into a wood chipper.
Yeah.
Mercifully.
The past must die. Kill it if you have to. Chase.
Absolutely. Yep.
So, welcome to the Dicebreaker podcast. You all know how this works by now. We're going to be going through all the things that we've been doing in the past week or so, depending on how long it's been since you've been on. Chase, you've got loads to talk about. So I think we should probably start with you. You've been playing This Person Should Not Exist.
I have an incredible game. Wheels, can you help me out with the designer of that game?
It's Speak the Sky, I think their name is.
Yeah, Speak the Sky.
Yeah.
So this is an interesting game that I found out about, and Wheels, I'm interested to know how you found out about this because I put out a call on Twitter for like some solo RPGs. I really enjoy just like solo gaming on my own time, and I wanted to kind of jump back in. So I put out the call, and no joke, 3 or 4 people all said, like, separate from each other, you need to play This Man Should Not Exist, or This Person Should Not Exist. I was like, okay, cool. The sell is that it's an RPG that you play using a Where's Wally book, and for the U.S. audience, that's Where's Waldo, which it's a British creation, right? It was a British author who came up with Wally.
Yeah, I don't know why it was renamed for a US audience. It's not like they called it like, you know, Where's Brick or something like that to make it a bit more American friendly. I've never heard of a man called Waldo before. I might be.
It's often the case that you know, English to American, vice versa, will be changed either because there are copyright issues, just like there is an exact. Again, my brain is not working today, but there is an exact US to UK situation where there was like a copyright and they've had to change the name to avoid that, or there's a rude word. It's like a rude word in Britain or something. But I imagine it's probably like a copyright thing, is my guess. That would be it. Otherwise, I can't think how it makes it more.
I imagine there was, at the time of its invention, there was one man in the US whose name was Wally, and he was like, "No, I have the sole rights to this name. You can't
took it all the way to the
come in
courts.
Here.
Yeah.
Take my one gimmick away from me."
If you know people in the chat, tell us.
But where's Where's Wally
I would be
book
really
is basically
interested in
like
the
a searchy book, right? Where it's got there's those hidden object books as well that were pretty like they were photography rather than illustrations. But this is like an illustration of like a really big, complicated scene with thousands of tiny little people in, and one of them is the person you're looking for.
Yeah. You got to spot Wally, and there's also like all these other things. Like Wally's got this like cast of weirdos. His girlfriend, some old wizard, his dog.
Wait, what?
And then there's
Do you not know about the old wizards?
No, I know about the wizard. I know about evil Wally.
Yeah, Oddlaw.
Yeah.
Which is just Waldo backwards.
Yeah.
Is he Yalaw in the?
I think he's
in the
Oddlaw.
UK then?
Yeah. Which is weird.
Doesn't make sense.
That's
Yeah.
odd. Okay.
So maybe it's the other way around. I don't know.
I did not
here comes
know.
the spooky coffee.
Oh well. That's
Spooky
terrifying.
caffeine.
I did not know that Wally/Waldo had a partner.
I believe her name is Wanda or something like that.
Oh,
Yeah.
come on.
That's right. Wally gets
Right,
dirty.
How?
That's why
Yeah.
I'm bobbing my head this time.
How how does one play this game?
Yeah, so.
Right. Anyway, so the game. So you start out, you just play Where's Wally? You go and you find Wally, and you go and you find all the other stuff. But the whole conceit is that you are someone who works for this like sort of occult government organization, a la Control, video game Control, or SCP, famous like internet site, like fan fiction site, and you are having to posthumously go through these photographs, like these aerial photographs, or like, you know, like camera up on a building photograph of a scene where something terrible happened, because the man who should not exist wreaks havoc and destruction wherever he goes, and you were going through and documenting all of this stuff. So the first thing you have to do when you find the man who should not exist, Wally, you circle him and then draw, or you write out a short poem of protection around there in order to like contain his evil influence.
Oh no!
And then you go and you find all of his compatriots who are called objects of power, or entities of power.
Entities of power.
Entities of power. They all have been like, there's like this in the document in the game that it gives you sort of like short lore of who they are. Like Oddlaw is like this person who is enamored with the person who should not exist, but is plagued by them. It's this sort of like push and pull relationship. The Wizard is like some like researcher who like bends time and space to his will and breaks it. The dog is called the Weeper, and like calamity follows him wherever he goes. You only see his tail, and as soon as you see that tail, you're about to be like struck dead or hit by a car or lightning or something like that.
My favorite one is because they have the objects as well, because basically like I think it used to be that the first couple of Where's Wally books were you just find Wally, but then like as they got more into the like they added new characters and new items to find and all kind of stuff, so you can find like a
WCU.
camera. Yeah, exactly. The extended universe started to get bigger, so they added like a camera.
If Buzz Lightyear gets one, Wally can.
Yeah, exactly. They get a cane, all that kind of stuff. One of them is just like a little scroll, which I'm assuming is supposed to be the Wizard's thing, but it's called the Library of Sin, and it's a document that contains all acts of evil that have happened and will happen. Like they're just really fun little like snippets of this weird world.
The cool thing is that like everything has like just enough of that like sort of like weird, evil, spooky sort of like vibe to it that like gets your mind going, because basically what you do is when you find 3 of them, you draw a connective triangle between them. And then one of the people that are in this image that is inside that triangle of influence, you then document as a person of interest. And each of the pages correspond to a case file that gives you some sort of prompt. Like I believe the first one is like, this is where the founders of the organization came from. They were there when the person who should not exist first came into being, and whatever calamity struck them spurred them to begin the organization. So you find that person, you get to decide, you circle their face, and then you take like Post-it notes or little scraps of paper, and you're like documenting this as a la sort of like a cork board with like, and you like post, like you come up with their name, and then you write a little sentence about like what happened to them. So like if you find a person in the triangle, you circle, and it's like, okay, this is like Thoreau Harbison. And depending on what items you circled, that like helps you to like find out what happened to them. So say like the Weeper was there. So you could say like Thoreau Arvison like saw the Weeper, was struck blind, but was like his head was filled with like visions of the future. And now he's using those to help guide the organization towards stopping the man who should not exist. And then later ones are about like there was a ritual that was going on and these people were inadvertently involved. This one was a mass casualty event. How did these 3 people survive miraculously, or how are the organization keeping them alive? So it's all just like prompt-based stuff. And all you're doing is you're playing Where's Wally and then using the results to help give you this fiction that you then create using the Post-it notes and the sort of drawn connections. It's super weird. It's super great. Like it's just like a fun activity. You can do a page at a time. Like it takes 20 minutes, depending on how good you are at Wally. But like, 20 minutes of just like finding stuff, drawing connections, and then writing a little short fiction, some short spooky fiction. It's great.
I think one of the reasons it works so well as well is like, unlike its like compatriots in this sort of like, journal writing kind of game style, the prompts are very much not random. So apart from the things that they're being circled with, you have like a predetermined 12 events. Like they're always the same, always gives you like a hook. You're only really meant to play it once, I think, but it means that it has a much better like actual story arc to the thing that you're writing out, rather than just be like, I draw a card, I see what it says, and then I try and make something up that works. It's like it's a lot more guided, and I think people who haven't played these kind of games before would probably really appreciate that. Like it's a nice
Definitely.
introduction to that style of game. The most morbid bit is after you finished all of that on a page, it says that the man who should not exist spreads its corruption, because a very common thing in Where's Wally books is like they have loads of people who are wearing red and white stripes as red herrings. So in the lore, this is like the man's corruption spreading through the world. So you have to scribble out their faces and do like kill markings on them so that a team can go out and like wipe out the people who've been corrupted.
Yeah,
it's like
you draw like a little dotted
dark.
box around them and mark for kill, and it's like if anyone's caught in there, it specifically says that's just part of the job.
Yeah, it's like collateral damage will happen. It can't be helped. Do your job.
Do your job.
Yeah,
I agree, Wheels. I think it's just structured enough, and like the fact that it uses an existing book. Like if you're someone who is daunted by the sort of like solo journaling thing where you just take an open notebook and you're like, these blank pages fill me with dread.
Yeah.
Using a Where's Wally book that you could pick up at a store for like $4, you know, like fairly cheap. They're all over the place. And then like a pen, a Sharpie, and some Post-it notes. And when you're done, you'll have this document that you can go back through and look at all the notes you did and all the scribbles and show people. It's very interesting. And I think it does take a lot of that load off of the player. And two, I love any game that gives you like this changed document afterwards that you're done, that you can go back to and reference afterwards. I like doing that.
Yeah, artifacts, I think they call them. Like,
Or
you make this nice thing.
you go to a charity shop
and then leave it there, for someone to horrifically find. Well, that's kind of the same vibe with the machine, isn't it? When you finish your journal for the machine, you like bury it somewhere and like hope that someone finds it or something, or you post it to the next person who's playing and they have to work out what's going on.
The idea of someone going to a charity shop, like a parent or something. I used to love Where's Wally books.
Yeah,
I bet my child would love this, and then they give it to them, and it's like filled with disturbing notes.
Part of me wants to, like, when I finish mine, like throw it in a trash bag and like duct tape it together, and then go geocache it somewhere and have someone like find it and have to unearth this and pull this thing out. And they're like, "What the?
Yeah,
what is this?
What happened here?" Yeah, I
vandalized
love
this book.
Genuinely makes this like horrible alternate timeline device. It's so cool. And so the reason I've been playing it as well is it's featured in a list that's going up on the channel this weekend, because me and Liv are both doing spooky lists for Halloween. Liv is doing the most terrifying horrible monsters you could play against in D&D, and I am doing 5 spooky TTRPGs that you can play for Halloween. And I always try and do, because I think you asked how I found it, Chase, and what I always try and do when I'm writing lists is I would just scroll through the relevant tag on itch.io on the physical games and just see if I've like missed something new that's come out that's interesting. And when I saw this, I was just like, I think I had heard of it before but had never really investigated. And I saw the Where's Wally picture, and I was like, oh my god, yes, this is definitely going in. Because we very much try and, like, especially on the YouTube channel, like, we try and get things that we haven't spoken about before. I think you do the same as well on your list, Meehan. But, like, it's nice to, like, be, okay, look, you all know about these ones. Like, let's try and, like, actually give you something that you don't know about. And then we get 400 YouTube comments of people going, why didn't you include Call of Cthulhu? And it's like, I mean, all right.
The lists on the website are more geared, I'd say, towards more of a mainstream audience, because of that sweet SEO.
Oh, it's delicious.
We're down in the mines trying to pull it out.
Which doesn't quite work in the same way on video. But also the lists are much longer, so we can afford to kind of put in a good mixture of things. So if you want like a more general list, there is one on the website of the best horror tabletop role-playing games. That's a good mixture of like ones you most likely heard of, as well as some ones that you might not have heard of. And then whereas Mr. Whelan's list here is very much ones that Wheels particularly likes, and that if maybe start with some of the ones on the website list, and if you like some of those, then you can delve into some of the ones that Wheels suggests, or whatever the way you want to do it. Yes, that was Toto
Wow.
as well
Yeah,
for
it was
the
Toto.
listeners. Yeah.
I've been trying to stave him off, but he is the weeper himself. He will not be denied his place on the
no.
podcast.
What calamitous future is Wheels going to be subjected to now?
Yeah,
Probably a hairball or something.
I always get like, obviously they're a bit stupid, but I always like get really confused by the like, why haven't you included this thing comments? Because it's like, did you turn up to watch this list to just hear about games you already know about?
No.
Like, I don't understand the
People
logic.
do that.
People love that. Like, I will say that one of the big draws of that we find one of the big draws on the website for the articles we write, particularly lists or opinion pieces, are like people want to go on there to either have their opinion affirmed or like see a list and be like, yes, this is definitely one of the best horror RPGs. I have been validated.
Vindication.
And it's kind of I mean I had that with my sci-fi RPG list. I did have a lot of people go on there and say, where's this one, and look, everyone, number one, I'm one human being. Number two, this is a single list. There are a lot of sci-fi role-playing games out there, many of which I've not heard of, played, or found. And you know what? We update these lists in the future. So maybe one that you really like might find its way onto there. But hey, why don't you look on these lists to find ones you might not have heard of or played? Because then you can find something new and give that a go.
And number, what was it, 3 that we got to? You might just have bad taste. Like, maybe you're reading this list and thinking that you don't like these games. Maybe you just got crap taste. Maybe that's it. Come at me, YouTube comments. I'll fight you.
I'd like to preface that my taste is not perfect and completely
Meehan is the sole arbiter of what makes a good RPG. You cannot...
The first and last word.
You cannot ignore her opinion.
You cannot establish that, because then every single RPG that is not based on a license I like has relatively straightforward rule set or allows me to have a romantic interaction with a fictional character is not valid.
No,
anyway,
Ian's right.
You've all got great
sort of
taste, and look, there's a million RPGs out there, so come find one that you haven't played before. That's the important thing.
Yeah, listen, watcher, listener, if you're the sort of person who likes to read things to affirm your opinion, love yourself a little bit more. You know, you deserve to explore outside of there and actually play some stuff that you haven't played.
And you
have
don't
some
need
different
our
opinions.
validation.
No,
certainly not.
You're more than likely better than us.
You pivot, my friend, from two very separate ends.
Listen,
of that
it's all in
spectrum.
good fun.
Chase,
man.
what else have you been playing this week?
All right, we spent so long on that.
Yeah, I know.
Let me get to some other stuff. So I wrote about this yesterday, but this is not me playing, and I think Wheels, you also did some of this. I've just been reading some RPGs. Specifically, I've been reading the RPG adventures from Games Omnivorous. Two of them, one is Eat the Rich, and another is Mouth Brood. That follow game, and so Games Omnivorous is a Portuguese publisher of like they call it like weird RPGs and weird adventures, and they have this one sort of collection called the Manifestus Omnivorous, which have 10 rules. And in the piece, which you can go read on Dicebreaker.com, I break down these like 10 rules. There's sort of stuff like every event or every book is an adventure. It can't be longer than 6,666 words. It has to be system agnostic. Yeah, ooh, spooky numbers. But the two or three like really interesting rules are like it has to be like a single location or like a single room, and then room is sort of like can be defined however, and it can only have one monster. And then it also has to have saprophagy or osteophagy, which is like the eating of decaying material or the eating of bones. So using those rules, the two adventures that I write about, Mouth Brood and Eat the Rich, go in totally different directions. And I think it's incredible. And I think it's a wonderful, and I discussed this in the piece, I think it's a wonderful sort of example of how whenever you give sort of artistic constraints to a form, to an art form, it comes up with some delicious pieces of poetry. Because I guess, generally speaking, when I think about like adventures or like adventure supplements, I'm thinking about like, 5th edition sort of like adventures. It's just another sort of capital F fantasy adventure in a different environment, but it's largely like the same stuff. It's just different names, different proper nouns, and like no shade on any of that. But I really like it whenever something sort of breaks that mold in really interesting and surprising ways. And the Manifestus Omnivorous collection, which you can find if you just search for Games Omnivorous, and like it's on their main page, really do that in some interesting ways. Like Eat the Rich is it's sort of in a post-apocalyptic future where like there's like this like flesh hunger disease that is striking humanity. It's not zombies. It is distinctly different from zombies because like most people like keep their humanity, but they're just like driven by this desperate need for flesh, which is more tragic than zombies because like by taking away the humanities from zombies, it's almost a blessing.
Have you seen the TikTok where it's like when the thing you're watching refuses to call zombies zombies, and it's like,
yep,
oh no, walkers, watch out, it's the shamble rambles. It's the spooky hookums.
The hoops that media has to go through, especially 30 years into zombie zeitgeist that we're in, is incredible. I love it. So this one, they're just called the Famished, which is, pretty good. It's not spooky hookums, but it's pretty nice. In the adventure, the players are ascending the Godspire to try to find a god who might cure this flesh plague. Unfortunately, when they get in there, it's a nightmare of a different sort. Things are not going well for the gods in the Godspire either. It's kind of shambles all the way down. And like, so Eat the Rich is really wonderful. It's sort of like a dungeon crawl. You're just starting at the bottom of the spire. You have to ascend to the top. You're going to go through rooms. Each room has a random encounter that might be a monster, might be some treasure, might be just an interesting thing. And it's sort of linear. But the whole thing, as you read through it, is this like really nicely put together sort of, if the title didn't give it away, Eat the Rich, it is a metaphor for like the sort of rot at the core of capitalism sort of thing. But it doesn't beat you over the head with it, which I really like. It definitely really tries to be an enjoyable adventure, something that you can bring to the table. And even if you didn't want to sort of embrace the politics at all, you're going to have a great time sort of like mucking about, killing some tech priests, and putting some glass balls in your eye to see if they give you weird powers.
I mean, I do that every day.
Yeah, that's just bog standard Saturday for me.
Yeah.
Can't get enough of those glass balls.
Yeah, what's your cool powers, Meehan? What are the glass balls giving you?
They're really bad powers. They're like
can drink a Red Bull and not stay up too late.
They're like be really loud and I'm just laughing now. Carry on.
This is one of the powers. This is why the eyeballs are so crap.
Just giggling, yeah. Just giggling uncontrollably.
Yeah,
they're really disappointing eyeballs. Also, while you were talking about that, I was imagining, the bit in Scooby-Doo where they unmask the monster and it's someone.
I thought you were going to say like a really specific plot point. In Scooby-Doo, like episode 47 of season 3, where
no one would be able to do that because there are possibly millions of episodes of Scooby-Doo now,
and they're all the same.
Yeah, but when they unmask the monster and it's just a person, I was imagining that, but like they unmask it and it's just capitalism again. It's like, it's just capitalism again. Like so many
Monopoly Man.
Yeah.
Everyone, like handles a rich Uncle Pennybags. Aww.
It sounds cool. What's the other one like?
So Mouth Brood quickly. Yeah, so Mouth Brood is sort of a cross between Arrival and Roadside Picnic, the Strugatsky brothers novel that got turned into Stalker.
Franchise.
Yeah, Stalker.
Rival! Is that the one with Amy Adams in it?
Yeah, the Denis Villeneuve movie.
That film slaps.
That is a great film. That is a fantastic film.
Yeah. What wonderful film. Yes. So it is sort of a cross between that. There's like a biodome in a glacier that's been unveiled, and you are a group of researchers that go into it. And there is life inside there that has like been contained for untold numbers of centuries and just been sort of eating on each other. It's a very self-contained. It is described as like a perfectly efficient cannibalistic ecosystem. Everything eats each other, and it's just sort of like a sort of constant cycle of like eating, death, rebirths, eating again, which is the cannibalism part of it. So like the sort of arrival stuff is like the group of researchers go in there and they're trying to understand what's going on. And there are three layers. There's like the undergrowth, the canopy, and then the emergent layer. And the cool thing about this is that most of the book is like this bestiary of beasts, all of them that kind of look like something else. It's like plants and animals that kind of look like stuff from Earth, but like with the weird stuff. Like there's an algae that can like crawl up your leg and then begin to like poison you from the inside without you knowing. There is the one apex predator is like this tiger whose belly opens up with a whole bunch of teeth, and it can just fall on you and eat you if it wants to. I mean, it's got claws and paws.
Like the gaping dragon.
Yeah, like the gaping dragon. It's just sort of like and just eats you.
I'm convinced that literally all the inspiration for these creatures come from just things they found in the sea. Like, you know, when you get those news bulletins and stuff where it's like
new fish found.
Yeah, even more grotesque thing found in the sea.
New fish
like,
just dropped, boys.
They're just horrible things living in there.
I agree. Yeah. There's like, it doesn't matter how many science fiction or fantasy books you write, you will never create more horrifying monsters than the ones that already exist in the depths of our own oceans.
Yeah. The deeper you get down, the more just horrible, awful. Yeah, it gets.
Yeah, it's like this blind blob has 7 jaws and 3 buttholes.
Yeah.
And every single one can know your secrets.
That is very much the sort of bestiary of Mouth Brood. And so yeah, you just sort of go in there, you're trying to like, you have a field diary that you're trying to like come across and like understand these creatures as much as possible. Get like these notes and get out. Yeah, sort of like a Pokedex, and then get out alive. But if Pokemon was just like also escape because something is chasing you. If you wake it up, it will hunt you down and eat you until there's nothing left.
I mean, you're like, something is chasing you, like on top of all of the horrible creatures that you come across and interact with. There's apparently something worse going on.
Don't get it twisted. Everything else is just like, oh, if it exists here, it exists to be eaten. That's just how life is. The one thing you should be watching out for is maybe sadistic in a different way. And that's the sort of like cunning, the animal cunning sort of like human evil part of it that should like worry you more than the lichen that's going to crawl inside your nose and take over your body, you know? But that's Mouth Brood. Yeah, please watch out for that. Bring your antifungal spray.
Don't.
So that's the Games Omnivorous Adventures. It's a fun read. I haven't brought either one of them to the table, but I will say it has turned me into a person who like wants to find these really evocative, sort of inspiring adventures first, and then either play them straight because you can. They're hex crawls, you can just bring them straight to the table, or like finding a really interesting system that will like sort of heighten them up. Like in the piece I talk about, you could play Eat the Rich with Mork Borg easily. Like that's just that's peanut butter and chocolate right there. I think for those who are like trying to like really break out of the mold and find something new to play, look for these adventures, find something that really speaks to you, and then try to find a system that might match up to it as a way of like easily bringing both new experiences to the table without having to do a lot of the front loaded like mental work of like, does everyone like this system? Now I've got to learn. It's like, if you pair them together, it's a contained adventure. It'll take like 1 to 4 sessions to go through it. So you're not going to spend months in a system that you might end up hating. It's, I think, a great way to sort of like bust into something to, you know, get the tabletop funk out of your game night.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
Right.
Okay. We've already.
I'm going to move on.
Yeah, we've been streaming for about 40 minutes. So
shall I go first? I've not got much. So
go ahead, mate. Go ahead.
Unlike these two RPG nerds, I played some board games.
What are those?
I played some more Yahtzee.
Sorry, hold on. Is the big Yahtzee Chad coming to bully us RPG nerds?
Yeah.
I almost spit take my coffee. I was not ready for Yahtzee. God.
I gave you a big wedgie, and then I said we played Yahtzee.
Nothing
hung me from the locker. I'm off to play Yahtzee.
Nothing makes you more of a Sigma male than playing Yahtzee. God.
Yeah, no, we played on Board Game Arena. It just seems to be a game that my group at the moment, everyone is tired these days, it seems. So we just want to play something that means that your brain doesn't really have to do much. And boy, oh boy, is Yahtzee that game, because it literally just entirely luck based, almost entirely. And the first game we played the other week, I smashed it. I've never known a Yahtzee game with such luck. It was astonishing. Since then, I've been doing so bad. It's like all my luck went into that one game, and now I'm just being, cursed forever in the Yahtzee dungeons. But other than Yahtzee, Chase and I, as well as Mr. Jarvis and Liv, played some Lost Ruins of Arnak, which I've spoken about before on the podcast.
Is this the deck building one?
Sort of, yeah. It's like, it's got a bit of deck building, it's got some worker placement, it's like a sort of mix and match. You would class it as a Euro, game, but I feel like it exceeds that label because I don't know, I look at a lot of games that are in that kind of label. For those who might not know what Euro game is, it's like it's a very generalized term for the kind of game where it's like efficiency is the key. It's all about efficiency, and it's about like streamlining your kind of process. This is a game that you're going to be playing over and over, and you just learn exactly what to do, at every turn, so then you can maximize. These games I don't tend to enjoy that much.
Me neither.
Because I like to just play games to enjoy myself and not to win necessarily. Winning is nice. But Lost Ruins of Arnak, I think, manages to provide me with a really satisfying experience, because it is one of those games that is designed to be played multiple times. But it's not necessarily, for me at least, it doesn't feel like you can win this like exactly by doing this, because there are some randomized elements in it, thank God. But there's just so much on like sort of uncover. It's almost like you are sort of searching through a dig site, trying to uncover all these secrets and discover, the key to unlocking this. But the key might not necessarily be exactly one thing. So there's deck building, there's worker placement, there's like resource management.
Gathering,
It's this was like the third or fourth time I played this game, and I taught it to everyone else.
You did wonderful. Taught it very well.
Thank you. At first, I was talking to them, I could see their eyes like glazing over because I could tell like it was just a lot for them.
It is a lot
to take in. It is a lot. There is a lot going on in that game. And I was like, I'm very sorry. This is just something you have to deal with right now. This is the reality of this game, but I promise you it gets good.
It did. It got good.
It did, yeah. I got a little message from you, Chase, on Monday being like, I can't stop thinking about Lost Ruins of Arnak.
It's like you said, like I'm thinking about how I can play it better, but I think you're right, me, and like the randomized elements and the way that people can like play off of, like when you go to a dig site, you uncover there's like a guardian who's guarding the dig site, and you have to have the resources to beat it to get whatever sort of thing that's there, but you might not. And then someone, and Alex did this like 3 times, I think, swooped into my dig site on the next turn and killed the guardian and took my stuff. So there's this like nice sort of like you have to be ready, and if you're not, like there can be this sort of like emergent sort of like contempt between players, this sort of race between players. Or you could be a player who's not going after guardians at all, and you're just ignoring. You're just going to let these two duke it out in the dirt. I'm going to be researching bones over here on my own. Like it's
bone day, baby.
I'm just here with my bones and my arrowheads. So it's really
I want
cool
a T-shirt. A cartoon
it's Bone Day, baby,
that just says "I'm just here with my bones." I would wear that.
And it's just me and some friendly skeletons.
Yeah, it's just you and some friendly skeletons. Chase very much pursued the research track, but the interesting thing about that is even though you were almost entirely dedicated to going up that
Yeah.
research track. You didn't
PhD
get
track,
like
baby.
that near the top, to be honest. It is very much like if you want to really get the rewards from this, and the rewards are great, you have to like dedicate yourself to just doing this. But it's so tempting to do everything else, and you're seeing other people do all the other things, and you're like, but I want to do that as well. So yeah, I won. But
That's why Meehan was making such a big deal.
No.
Oh, you know, winning's nice. You know, I'm not a big winner. I won, by the way.
I genuinely think my strategy wasn't especially great, apart from like what Chase was saying, where people were kind of getting to the dig sites, uncovering them, finding the Guardians, being like, oh, I don't have the things I need. And then I was like, oh no, how terrible. And the next round, I would pop myself in there and like...
Don't worry, I got it.
Yeah. I
like
got
a
it,
parasite.
Yeah, almost. But that game just slaps so hard. And like, I've got the expansion. I'm desperate to play. It looks so cool. And I'm hoping for more content from them, but also just more like games from the designers, because it still baffles me that was their debut design title. A game this good, like that has that Euro game sensibility, but it's not just another one of those games. It's so much more than that.
Isn't it from like a spouse pair that designs together?
Yeah,
it's
Elwyn
super cool.
and Min. Yeah. I spoke to Elwyn at the Essen. They were very cute. They were like, oh, thank you. I said, I really like your game. Yeah, I played that and Yahtzee, and other than that, I've not really been playing. Oh, we played 10 Candles yesterday.
We did. We played it yesterday.
You should go watch that. It's a good video. Yeah.
Just go and watch the stream, to be honest. That's all I really have to say. Like, we've talked about 10 Candles quite a bit.
I recommend 10 Candles on the YouTube channel alone about 40 times, I think. It is one of the best horror games ever made, and we couldn't give it its full impact on the live stream because we couldn't have candles in the studio. We only had 2 hours, all that kind of stuff. But even still, we had a great time. So
yeah, it was excellent. Like, again, it's one of those horror RPGs. I feel like horror is just such a good genre for these kind of RPGs. I think
it's because it's like it's rooted in that like campfire tales kind of tradition, isn't it? It's like humans are so good at telling scary stories with each other. You know?
It just fits like in that kind of collection of horror RPGs that are designed around collaborative storytelling. That was great. Other than that, I finished Squid Game. Finally.
Cool.
Nice.
So that was good. And yeah, I don't think I've really been.
Can you give me one or two sentences how you felt about the ending? I just need to know.
Okay.
Anime
haircut.
Yeah. That hair. Firstly, that hair.
A choice.
Secondly, my heart.
Money doesn't give you taste.
No.
No. I kind of applauded that though. Secondly, yeah, my heart was broken by the end of that series. At first, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna watch this because everyone else is saying do it, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to be that cheap. And then you know what? It actually is really good.
It's really good. There are sometimes where you see loads of people recommending things, and you're like, surely it's not that good. You watch it, and you're like, really? Is this?
I found that with The Witcher, controversially enough, I wasn't hugely into that series, to be honest. Like,
I found that with Midnight Mass recently. Everyone was talking about how good it is. I was like, this is crap. But with Squid Game, I was like, fair enough. I can see why everyone's going wild about this because it is fantastic.
I will say, certain people weren't that great with acting, and I'm not sure whether that was deliberate or whether that was...
You should Google that. There has been some reporting on why that is the way it is. Yeah, so there is a reason.
Deliberate, right? Okay.
Is it?
Okay.
Are we talking about the ones who don't speak Korean?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good. That very much felt like this is a person who is reading a script that was not originally written in English. For it was. Yeah. I can understand.
I wonder if they were dubbed. Okay, I don't know what the reason is, but
definitely go read about that. There's some very good reporting on why that ended up the way it did.
Yeah.
But like all the Korean actors and so all the people playing the contestants were incredible. Like they're all really, really good. Once again, like I hope that this indicates to Netflix and whatever other companies that are paying attention that people are perfectly fine with watching things with subtitles. Like, this is not as big a hurdle as studios seem to think it is, because this is absolutely just exploded.
The problem is, I think they haven't taken that lesson. The lesson they've taken is, people really like Korean stuff. It's like, no!
The exact wrong lesson.
That's good, but it's mainly the fact that there are things outside of America and England that are worth watching.
Yeah, I mean, like, I would argue that South Korean television and films have been quite popular before Squid Game. I think it was
like Kingdom and stuff, wasn't there?
Yeah. And you know, it was Parasite, and I feel like there's been Train to Busan. I feel like there's been a kind of, I don't know if Renaissance is not the right word, but there's been like a sort of surge in interest of you know, South Korean,
especially with like the K-pop thrust as well.
So, but I'm hoping this isn't just. Obviously, we want to see more South Korean television and film because I think it's great. But I hope they don't just take that from it. They actually take from it like, hey, international stuff can actually people actually really dig it. Like, you gave it
I would
a
love for
chance.
this to be part of a larger thrust of like a whole lot of international media, South Korea and African and Indian
South
and
America,
whatever.
Or like that's very general. That's a whole continent, but like we don't see much media. From
it instead feels like we've turned South Korea into America's little media brother, right? It's just like American hegemony and then a little bit of South Korean as a side plate.
Just to mix things up a little bit.
Yeah, so that's what I've been doing. I've been playing spooky video games, but
we'll talk about that very soon. As our little segment.
My friend.
Were you about to call me Matt?
No, I wasn't. I promise.
Oh, okay.
I was saying my friend. Tell us what you've been doing.
Yes, as Chase said, I've been reading some stuff. I've been reading Heart recently, The City Beneath, which is another game that we talk about this weekend. Is fantastic. It's one of those games where it's like I don't even need to play this to know how brilliant this is. Like this is my favorite thing about Heart is, and I said this in the video, like the classes are literally it's the thing that you mainly come in for. Like there's some cool stuff in the book, there's some cool mechanics they use, but the character classes are just so fantastic and evocative, and like the main difficulty of playing this game is picking just one. Like it's like, oh god, I want to be this, but I also want to be this, but I also want to be this. Some of my favorites include the Deep Apiarist, which is a witch that is entirely made out of bees. There is the Cleaver that eats corpses and like managed to shapeshift their body based on the things they've been eating. There's the Dead Walker, who is like a person who died at some point but never went anywhere. So they kind of exist between the planes of life and death, and they are followed around by a physical manifestation of the way that they died that only they can see. Like there are just so many, like you read it and you're like, you don't need to like spend much time making a character because it's all just so cool anyway. And the best thing they do is they have this thing where, because it's kind of like a Powered by the Apocalypse game, right? You gain moves over time, or Fortune of the Dark or whatever, but the moves kind of like are in different tiers, and your kind of character arc finishes when you get one of your final moves. And they are like world-endingly powerful. Like it's like I think about 90% of the ones end with your own character dying. Like they're just so like catastrophically world-changing that they become the final act of your character when you pull off the final move or whatever. And like you can flood entire districts of the city and make them part of some kind of sea cult. There's just like things that forever scar the world based on what your character did.
I feel like I just want to say I feel like RPGs would benefit so much more from thinking really creatively about classes. Like there are just so many RPGs that you see, and it's just like they've got the fighter one, and they're still very much following in the same sort of paths as like D&Ds and such, and like that's fine. It's what people expect. But like I think it's so cool when an RPG like, yeah, we're just gonna make this class which is not maybe a little bit like a ranger, but something completely off the wall. And
I think the most interesting thing about it is that I think loads of RPG writers, especially when they make like classic like party classes, it's like, oh, here, here's the healer, here's the whatever. I think they're really scared about being too specific, because I think because they know that people like making characters, and it's like, yeah, like 20 people can play whatever, a cleric, but they'll all be different. And I think people are really scared to take that away from players. But actually, some of my favorite things in RPGs recently have been just like, this class is so specific that, like I would rather have like 20 really, really specific ones, and I'm gonna have a whale of a time like playing out this really weird character, rather than
like 5.
Yeah, 5 ones that I've basically played before that have some slightly cool things in them,
Yeah, and like your character's class is not their entire identity.
Exactly, yeah.
This is another thing that I think people find it very hard to kind of separate themselves from. Like, your character can be a person, and then their class is just a part of who they are. Like, just one part. It's not their entire shtick. And I suppose it is that approach to character building where it's like, I'm going to maximize this path, and I want these spells and whatever. And it's like, yeah, that's great. But I guess that's not really what we enjoy about role playing. We like making a character with motivation, personalities, etc., rather than just like, this is just a platform for numbers.
I think so. We had a comment here in the live chat. We record this live every Friday at 2 p.m. BST. We had a comment from Checkerbeards who said you can end up the opposite problem of wanting to play a fairly usual class and there's only off the wall stuff available. But I think that's like, again, another problem is that we're so obsessed now with making stuff that appeals to everyone, rather than being like, no, I'm going to make something that's really hyper focused on the thing that I like, the story I want to tell.
Yeah.
And like it's not going to be for everyone, because like not everyone's going to enjoy this style of game, as long as it's accessible to everyone, obviously. Like, but it should be, and not with every game, but like I think there should be a large portion of games that are just like, if you're into this really interesting, weird little like subsection of lore or whatever, like this is the game for you. Like even things like Blades in the Dark, which has had like really mainstream success, the whole premise of that game is everyone's a rogue. Like they're all just sort of subclasses of rogue, right? And they all have like their own cool little thing that they can do. But I do think they're all
doing one very specific thing.
Yeah.
Which is pulling off ice. Like there's not there's not like a mission where you go and fight a load of things, or like you find some treasure or whatever. Like this is very specifically what you're doing. And I think it is possible for those games to be embraced by a larger group of people. I think the perspective of tabletop role playing as to what it is and what experience it can be just needs to change. Like I feel like it's getting there, it's getting better, but I still feel like, and it's not I don't think it's people's fault. I think it's the way that it's the industry and certain spokespeople have put it across, is that like, if you enjoy min-maxing characters and whatever, that is there for you. There is lots of opportunity for that.
There's an abundance.
But there are also opportunities for people who aren't just into that, for them to have these experiences that are specifically designed. They're specifically designed to give this experience. Like it's not, and then you can play a different game that gives you a different experience. Like you don't have to have, this is the RPG I play and I only play this RPG ever. There you go. We just had a big philosophical discussion.
Oh, we always do when RPGs
games.
come up. I think RPGs is such an interesting topic to talk about, really. But yeah, I've also been playing This Pleasure Does Not Exist, as we talked about earlier, and 10 Candles, which you mentioned earlier. I also played a video game called Wilderness for a bit, which is very, very cool. Fantastic stuff.
I want to try it. I'm excited.
Yeah, it's like if you are a fan of RPGs and the way in which RPGs feel like to play on the tabletop, I think Wilderness is a really interesting like video game adaptation of that. But it takes the form of like an XCOM style, like grid-based, turn-based combat. But in between all of those bits of fighting, you have these like characters that just evolve over time, and like these really interesting little narrative beats where they basically make these little graphic novels out of your character art, and your characters will just have interesting things happen to them, and every now and again you'll pick a path for them and whatever. So like I played like the beginner starter campaign. You do like 3 acts and then it's done, and you can do as many as you want. They've all got like different monsters that you come up against and stuff. And one of my characters like started turning into some kind of weird crow person. One of my characters went into a dungeon and found like one of those classic like it's a statue with gems in it, should I steal the gems? And when I clicked on the screw it, steal the gems, I was expecting it to be like, oh, there was a trap and you got hurt, but like one of their eyes turned into a boulder and they started growing into a rock person and stuff, and it's like there's so many things where it's like, no, this isn't just going to be you have dropped a stat and now you are less interesting. Like your characters are going to physically change forever. And it's like a really, really cool thing where, you do these little mini campaigns, you tell a story and then it's done. And then those characters become like legacy characters that can like show up in other things. And you have like this big, like the whole theme is, you've got like this folklore book that is filling with every adventure you take. It's like writing out your tales and stuff. And it's really cool. I think if you're into RPGs and you're into strategy gameplay, like give it a go, because it's that nice sort of like bridging the gap between tabletop and video games. But that is what we've been up to this week. Meehan, I'm going to throw it over to you for a quick little news segment before we start talking about some spooky Halloween things.
This is going to be so quick. We'll just do a quick overview of the news. If you would like to read more news, you can go over to Dicebreaker.com.
See these two lovely people.
I squat on there.
Yeah, please. Like I'm over here shaking my news cup. Like alms for the news boy, please.
Please. Yes. We've got news on there. We've got features. We've got other things.
We got some opinions. They might not be worth anything, but there's some opinions there. Honestly, your piece about horror games was like. Horror board games need to take more risk. Very good.
Oh, thanks.
Go read that.
Thanks, Chase. Yeah, you can go and read that right now if you're feeling in a particularly spooky mood. I did that opinion piece this week. We also have other wonderful features available on the site. We have this week a feature about lyric RPGs, which is very interesting.
Very good read.
We also have a feature about rolling dice and why it's important in RPGs. We also have a list about the best horror board games that you can read right now if you want to get inspired. But the news we're going to talk about this week, I've just picked out 2 little interesting pieces. Earlier this week, it was announced that there's a new Risk Legacy game.
Yeah.
Just out of the blue.
Just like it's been what? Multiple years. Yeah, 10 years.
10 years,
Jesus.
Exactly. 10 years.
Holy moly.
God. What if they just release one every decade?
So, for those who may not...
I'd appreciate that.
For those who may not know, Risk Legacy is in the Risk... Oh, yeah. I can feel Matt Jarvis breathing down my neck. It's based off the Risk series, but it's its own thing. And it's essentially considered the first legacy board game, like ever. It started off this massive trend, which we saw was followed by Pandemic Legacy, Betrayal Legacy, Machikoro Legacy, all these games that kind of followed after it.
Really fun period where everyone was calling themselves a legacy game when like half of them were just like they had a campaign in them.
Yeah.
I
cut a piece of paper at some point.
The definition of legacy games is a little loosey-goosey, but Risk Legacy kind of established it as like a campaign-driven game where you can sort of permanently alter the actual components inside. So 10 years after this game was released, it was announced during Hasbro PulseCon, which is something I didn't know about.
Sorry?
Until I did this news piece. Hasbro PulseCon.
Did not get that presser.
Of course not, Chase. It's an online convention. section where they talk about their games that are coming up.
I mean, come on,
Hasbro's-
everyone at home has heard of it. It's the biggest con in the world.
Household
It
name.
is a con. Heyo. It's run by. I mean, Hasbro is basically the largest tabletop gaming company just in the world. Like, they're huge, but they're just not very good at marketing their stuff. So that's why we come along, and they announced during this online con that Risk Shadow Forces is coming. That name is not great. I'm gonna say now. It's not even Risk Legacy Shadow Forces.
No, haven't even
it's
bothered
just
to put legacy in it.
Risk Shadow Forces. So it doesn't really indicate that it's a legacy game, but
They don't care about SEO, obviously.
Yeah, they don't. It's set in the far future of 2050.
God.
Where essentially the normal sort of stuff, like bad climate change, corporations are evil, all that sort of thing. Same old, really. But the players take control of a warring faction that fight against each other, similar to the original Risk. But in this one, what's special about it is that they control specific warlords. So these are characters that are kind of heads of. So you choose your warlord, but then you can actually change factions throughout the game depending on what kind of combinations you want, which I thought was a bit interesting. But these different warlords kind of approaches to combat, and they also have like their own specific motivations. It looks like they're kind of going for more of a narrative focus than the original, which doesn't surprise me because a lot of legacy games kind of are doing that.
Yeah.
They actually reveal quite a lot of details. You can read all of them on the news piece on the website, and it's being published by Avalon Hill, who do Betrayal, and it feels like Hasbro are kind of developing Avalon Hill a lot more. They're like before they were just known as these are the Betrayal people, but now it looks like they're making quite a few interesting looking games. They're giving them these big licenses like Risk. Hello, yes, Mr. Whelan.
Yeah, no, I was just... It's weird that they're returning... Because I remember when Pandemic Legacy came out.
Yeah.
And the general consensus was, this is great, Legacy games are great, it's really good that we've got one that isn't based on a kind of naff, old, crappy rule set now.
Yeah.
Because Pandemic is actually a good game, so you can build on that. Whereas Risk is not a very good game.
Hot
It's
takes
basically
from
just,
this corner.
well, you roll some dice, you move some people around.
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
it's pretty
I'm
basic.
not bothered, but...
So it's weird that they're like, oh yes, it's finally time to return to Risk, the ultimate legacy game.
You say that, but Risk Legacy was incredibly... From what I know, Risk Legacy was pretty damn successful. Risk is a well-loved franchise.
Yeah, but
Mr.
it was the first legacy game, right? So I don't know if like looking back, people will be as favorable. Do you know what I mean?
I'm not sure people necessarily bought it because it's a legacy game, because at that point legacy games didn't really technically kind of exist. It was just like, what's this thing? I think it's more like Risk was popular anyway. I'd say Pandemic Legacy is the one that really kickstarted the legacy board game trend, but Risk is still popular regardless of how you look at it. Like, it's one of those games that most people have heard of or own or have played. Or free. So it's not surprising that they're coming back to it. I think it's surprising that they're coming back to it 10 years later. But it might be the case that there was some legal stuff, but behind that. I don't know if Rob Davio, who was the co-designer of the original game, there's no confirmation whether he's actually come back to design this one. I don't know who the designers are. They've not said. They've not made it clear.
Love that.
I don't know whether the thing is, it could be a development thing where there are multiple people responsible for it and there's not really one person. A lot of board games are getting that now, where they're just made by a team or a company, not necessarily made by like one or two people. But yeah, so it's going to come out in autumn next year for a hefty price of $81, which is £59, which I think is a lot.
Yeah,
for a game. It depends what's in there.
Legacy games
but...
tend to be a bit more pricey, don't they, in general, because they've
got
a lot of stuff in them.
I can't remember how much. I think we paid about that much for Pandemic Legacy, to be honest. I suppose it's like the amount of like playtime you get out of it. And
usually you split it as well, don't you, between a few people?
Yeah, because you play with the same kind of group.
Yeah.
But there you go, new Risk Legacy. The other news we had, which I think you two might enjoy a bit more.
Yes.
Yes. Is there is a new Mork Borg spin-off called Cyborg, which I love.
I mean, come on.
Incredible. Just so good.
Fair
the
play.
only thing is they don't have the umlaut above Borg, but I suppose the umlaut was on Mork. But
it's because it was metal, wasn't it, I guess?
Yeah. For those of you who may not know about Mork Borg, it's a kind of indie RPG darling, I'd say. When it was released back in 2020, it just came out of nowhere, and then people were like, "What is this thing? It looks incredible." And I think I've not played it, but I've seen the book layout, and I think the book layout is something that people really dig because it's not your traditional.
It is a beautiful book. Like, it's not beautiful in the sense that like a pretty flower.
No.
Beautiful in the sense that it's like such a fantastic like artifact of graphic design. Like, it's incredibly heavy metal inspired, like doom metal. It's very like bold. Like, it goes from like deep blacks to bold pinks and yellows. Like, it just slaps you in the face with every single page. But it's also just like it's like an OSR. It's got loads of like fun writing in it. It's another example, to be fair, just like heart of like really cool, interesting character classes. Where it's like, I think one I remember is like your like generic fighter guy just uses his teeth. Like, he just bites people. He just loves biting.
Main attack bite.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, so Mork Borg came out, heavy metal inspired fantasy RPG, won multiple Ennies that year, which is essentially the most prestigious prize a tabletop RPG can win. And along comes Cyborg, which was announced this week. And it is a cyberpunk inspired, version of Mork Borg. But it's not just the same game; it is its own thing. But it uses the same setting. So whereas Mork Borg was, like Will said, inspired by doom metal and fantasy themed, Cyborg seems to be taking its inspirations from industrial and underground hip hop kind of music. So from, I believe, the same sort of era, but very different, like
vibes.
Vibes. Yeah, I will state, I am not an expert on
in either
metal,
genre,
heavy metal, industrial, or underground hip hop.
I think, like, if people want an easy comparison, like I
know 9 Inch Nails is
I mean, if like as a game, like if people want an easy comparison, if Mork Borg or Cyborg were a video game, they would have been published by Devolver. It's got very much that vibe. It's like counterculture-y. It's very, very good looking, and it's like, as you say, Meehan, it's like a sort of indie darling. Like, it's got very, very good goodwill to it.
So, as you'd expect, this game is set in the future. Loads of cyberpunk elements like anti-capitalism and transhumanism and technology and stuff like that. All the kind of things you expect, but with this, counterculture approach to it. And the entire thing will be set in the city of Psy. That's
in the town of Borg.
The town of Borg. And it'll be based on the same system with some things sort of added to it to make it fit with the setting. So there'll be like rules around like hacking and all the sort of things you'll be expecting to do in a cyberpunk setting. And it's going to hit Kickstarter in next month, so the 13th. So it's not far off, and then hopefully release in next year.
Sweet, looking forward to it.
There you go.
So just to finish that one off, 1 second. Cyberpunk. All right, let's go. Let's move.
Yeah. Okay. We got that out of the way, everyone. Thank God. I know you were worrying. Yeah, that's all the news. Yeah, go to dicebreaker.com for more news, please.
See these lovely
Or
people.
other
Read
stuff.
all their articles.
Yeah, read all of the articles, everyone,
nice
and tell me
comments
how long it
underneath them.
takes.
Yeah, just click on them and stay there for a little bit. Go make a cup of tea, and then come back and click
Yeah,
another
that'd
article.
Yeah.
That's
if you
fine.
did that, that'd be great,
That'd
honestly.
be
Just
fantastic.
keep
Make sure your
doing
ad block is
that.
turned off.
Yeah, please
Please.
turn your ad blocker off.
Please.
Haha. We are a business.
Our industry is not precarious at all.
No, not the slightest. Moving on to our segment
Yeah,
for
let's
the
go to
podcast.
segment, everyone.
Speaking of horror,
But speaking of
Hey!
horror and terrible situations, we're going to be talking about some of our favorite horror themed things. We're also going to maybe suggest what our dream horror game could be if we feel like it. Is there a tabletop tie-in that we wish had been made in the horror genre? But in general, we're just going to talk about some of our favorite horror films, favorite horror games, just chatting about horror things as we come into the spookiest of seasons, the end of
spooky
Spooktober
time
for Halloween.
Yeah.
We don't have a whole lot of time.
No.
But it's fine. We'll just have a wee chat.
Yeah.
Meehan, you are our resident biggest spook fan. I think you are our. Liv, I think, is a close contender as well. But
yeah.
I think as she's not here, as our biggest spook aficionado, what's your favorite thing to spook out to?
Spokesperson for
The
spooks.
spooksperson.
Yeah, spokesperson. Yeah, excellent. Can't believe I didn't see that. Oh, there he is.
There he is. He won't stop.
Photo. He won't stop. The true horror. He won't stop. Yeah. What do I mean, I will say horror is a genre that I very much enjoy in all aspects, except for maybe in real life, because I wouldn't actually want any of this stuff to happen to me. But I do enjoy watching and interacting with fictional scenarios. So, let's go. Favorite horror films. I mean, some of my favorite films of all time
are horror films.
Yeah. Because I think horror is one of those things. It's a bit like the Shakespearean play Macbeth. When you get it right, you get it really, really right. But when you get it wrong, oh boy, it's bad. And I have seen some productions of Macbeth which are people were laughing and they weren't supposed to be, and that's sad. But
that's horror of a different kind.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I've also
cringe
seen
horror.
some good ones. So yeah, horror is a genre that can be absolutely awful because it just gets milked. Because it's very cheap to make a lot of the time. But good horror films are really, really good. So, The Thing
is fantastic. One of my favorite films of all
classic.
time. Yeah, it's one of my favorite films of all time. John Carpenter, you absolute devil, you.
Mad lad.
Mad lad John Carpenter. Also director of Halloween. Another horror film that slaps. Not as much as The Thing. But The Thing is very interesting because it was a remake of a film that was an adaptation of a book. So this has gone a while to get here.
It shouldn't have been good.
No, Kurt Russell is the lead. No offense to Kurt Russell, right? He's great, but he's
don't put disrespect on Snake Plissken's name.
I'm not disrespecting Kurt Russell, right? I'm not disrespecting at all. In fact, I'm looking disrespectfully. He's not exactly a nuanced actor, but he does this role perfectly well because it is the kind of role that he excels at, where he doesn't say an awful lot. He doesn't need to. It's very much obviously action focused, but those moments where he has to express paranoia or tension, if you've not watched the film, watch it. Content warning. Gore. The practical effects in this film. The practical effects are just astonishingly good. The practical effects are the thing that sold, producers initially on this film. At first they were like, oh, I don't know. But then John Carpenter's, look what this person can do. And they were like, oh. Yeah, that they are just I don't get wrong. I think CGI has its place, but I feel like this film, if anything, is like this is what practical effects can achieve. And like some of the scenes in this film, not just the gore and the blood, because it is fantastic and like very graphic and incredible, like just the scenes where they're just a group of people being like, we can't trust anyone. This is a horrible situation. Is just incredible. So The Thing, excellent. Obviously, shout out to Alien. I don't think I need to say much more about this film. Ridley Scott, another mad lad. Again,
bit too mad.
yeah, now he's gone down the hole a bit, but he's made two of my favorite films of all time.
Yeah.
Alien and Blade Runner, like incredible. Now he's making a film where Adam Driver and is it Matt Damon are just fighting about stuff happening in the Middle Ages.
I don't know.
I just know it's just Matt Damon with a mullet, medieval mullet. Matt Damon.
It looked bad. But his hair is awful in that. But yeah, no. Yeah, Alien's great. I also enjoy Aliens, but I feel like Alien is the superior film as someone who loves horror. Other horror films I love, Hereditary, anything that Ari Aster's done.
Hereditary is incredible.
Slaps. No, Hereditary is one of the best films ever made until the last 2 minutes. Do not watch the last 2 minutes.
No, I disagree.
Please don't.
Disagree.
No, why?
I genuinely, I think it was like
the last 2 minutes.
The whole film was
necessary.
about. It's the whole like satanic panic was the vibe of the film throughout. I think.
Yeah, but we got that. We don't need it explained to us by a woman in dialogue for the last minute. We don't need that. Don't you remember this?
Woman in dialogue.
This is what I love about horror films.
Do you not remember this?
No,
bit?
I don't remember the woman. I thought you meant the general ending.
No, the ending's great, but no, for those I won't spoil it for you. Although Wheels has already kind of spoiled it. The last. Yeah.
Not really. Okay.
Yeah. The last minute of that film, there is dialogue. There's just a voiceover on it, sort of, where this woman is basically explaining the entire plot of the film.
Oh, I don't remember.
For almost no in-film reason, really, at all.
It's funny that you mentioned that actually, because the original cut of Blade Runner has Harrison Ford doing the least acted voiceovers explaining the plot as it goes on.
He's bored. He's so tired.
Seems like it's a common problem in the films we love.
Don't ever watch that. Just don't watch it
unless you just want to. Unless you want to laugh or ruin a great film. But no, yeah, the last minute of Hereditary, up to that point, it's one of the best films I've ever seen. Ari Aster shooting out the park. I also have a fondness for Candyman. I feel like that film's pretty good.
Yeah, well, that's getting the original adaptation as well, isn't it?
I've heard mixed things about that one.
Yeah,
I've heard mixed things about it. Yeah, it was out a while ago, I think.
Oh right.
Yeah, I think wasn't Jordan Peele involved in it?
He's the producer or something.
Producer?
Yeah, he's not director, but I heard mixed things about it. But the original very much has a slasher vibe, but it's got themes of racism.
This is the thing, isn't
it? Racism. I'd sorry. I think have a lisp sometimes.
No, me too. I think the best horror films are the ones that, for the majority of human storytelling, horror has been used as a thing to talk about social issues and things that people aren't supposed to be talking about, etc., etc. And yeah, I think we have lost that a little bit in modern horror, and it's good to see it come back a bit.
I feel like there was a period where horror was very much just like a lot of genre films where the studios just weren't making them. Yeah. Or if they did make them, they were rubbish.
It's kind of the state that we're currently in with cyberpunk material.
Yeah. But I feel like over maybe the last 5 years or so, we have seen a resurgence in horror films that are being made that aren't just the Conjuring 12.
Oh God, yeah.
Here comes
Nun.
Here comes the Nun. Yeah, you will have because they're so cheap to make. You will have your horror series that are just milked till they're just a husk of just a miserable husk of patheticness. But then you've got these filmmakers who are coming out and saying, hey, I can make a horror film that is genuinely really good, and people will watch it because horror is kind of big at the moment. And so we can both make your delicious money, and I can actually make a horror film that is good. Like, I will even say, and this is a controversial opinion, people might not like it for me, might not like me for it. What is wrong with me today? I think I'm just too excited. I really liked Mother, and I know a lot of people didn't like that film, and I completely understand why. Number one, Darren Aronofsky is an idiot.
He's a
Number
moron.
two, I will give you that. He is a moron.
He is a complete moron.
Darren, come on the podcast.
He never deserved to be with Jennifer Lawrence. I don't know how that happened, but
Jennifer Lawrence is also pretty terrible, to be honest. But carry on.
They can have each other.
I know why people don't like that film. Darren's explanation of it is stupid. Ignore him.
What I love about it is
However,
my favorite thing about it is, for anyone who doesn't know, and like it will be beaten into you with a sledgehammer if you ever watch anything about it.
Spoiler alerts for Mother. If you want to watch, right, I'll go first before Wheels goes because I will not spoil it.
Okay.
Right, I will explain why I think Mother is good, despite the thing.
Everything about it.
Just let me have the
Sorry, carry on.
It encompasses the kind of nightmares that I've genuinely had. Like, watching this film was an incredibly stressful experience because this is just a film, to me, ignoring the rubbish, about someone whose house is being invaded. They're seeing exactly what's happening, and everyone else is ignoring them. Like, I have had dreams where someone is doing something awful, like someone has broken my house or is threatening me or something, and everyone else is just acting like this is normal and this is fine. I'm the only one who's noticing this. And that film, I think, nails that feeling so well. That is why I like the film. Mr. Whelan, go. Spoilers!
Yeah, no, it's not a huge spoiler. It's just my favorite thing surrounding Mother is because he is such an idiot. Whenever you have like the director interviews, you know that interview with David Lynch where he's talking about how Eraserhead is one of his most spiritual films.
Which one? They're all good.
Well, I mean, you would have found out if I finished the sentence. But you know that interview where he's talking about how Eraserhead is one of his most spiritual films, and then the interviewer says, "Elaborate on that," and he says, "No." Like, that is the polar opposite of Aronofsky, who's just like, here are all the 4 themes that I'm trying to get in this film.
Yeah.
There you go. I'm going to go now.
Yeah. Essentially, Darren Aronofsky had a very specific idea for what Mother is. And it's a stupid biblical...
Mother Nature thing.
Yeah. So luckily I didn't find that out before I watched it. So when I watched it, I was like, oh, this is just a horrible story about this poor woman who's being like terrorized by these people and her own husband. And then when I found out what Darren's big idea was, I was like, well, that's really stupid. Yeah. I see it now, but I like the idea. I'm so glad I had that experience of watching it and not having heard any of the ideas behind, because like the film
really
itself,
like it
you watched it like
it
that. It
felt like it was almost made about your dreams, kind of thing. Is that?
I liked it because I feel like it tapped into a horror experience a lot of other films don't do, which is like, this is a very surreal experience. Like, you've got to get on board with that. And this is a genuine fear that I have felt. Like, dreams are a surreal kind of nightmare that I feel like a lot of films don't manage to capture, but I feel like that film did, regardless of Aronofsky's rubbish. So there you go. Other horror stuff, I'll go very quickly. This is the problem. I love this subject so much.
Yeah,
right,
no, I let you go first because I knew you were going to take up the majority.
Sorry,
this is your play park.
Yeah.
Favorite horror video games. I mean, I like learning about horror video games. I don't necessarily actually like playing them because they are a very, very stressful experience for me.
Do you know what? Hold on.
Hello.
What if you do films, and then one of us does video games, and then
the
other person does tabletop?
I'll just do a shout out to Dread. That's all I want to do. Shout out to Dread, the tabletop role playing game.
Chase,
There
do
you
you
go.
do you want to take horror tabletop and I'll take horror video games?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, horror video games. A big shout out to Darkwood. If you've not played Darkwood,
Haven't.
it's a bit of an indie one, but Darkwood is genuinely like that game messes me up. Like there aren't many horror games that I'm like, yeah, all right, fair enough, because I feel like they really do lose their tension after about a couple of hours. Darkwood is. It doesn't look like it should be scary. It is a top-down, like, almost black and white in its bleakness, colorless and desaturatedness art style. But it is like a sort of survival game where you're in this weird, kind of Eastern European-y, like, folklore area. Like, you're in the middle of a dark wood. And the wood is its own character, like it's its own weird entity.
I think I've heard of this.
Yeah, so you spend your days going out and getting supplies because you need fuel for the generator and you need like wood to barricade the windows and doors and stuff. And you go out and you find clues as to how to progress into the next area. The trailer is literally just like 10 minutes of the game. Where you go into this barn and there's like this, it's called The Wedding, quote unquote, and there are like these like dancing specters and stuff, and it's like heart pounding, especially when the thing that happens at the end. But you basically spend your days going through all these weird places and getting a little bit spooked. But nothing terrible usually happens. Like there's a few enemies, but nothing awful. Usually just fighting like little dogs and things like that. And then you go back to your house because the sun is setting. And you don't ever sleep in this game. You just have to wait the whole night until the sun rises. And honestly, it is one of the most horrible experiences, but in a good way that you can have, because you will just spend the whole thing just like, you know, you've only got a few lamps that work and every now and again they'll flicker and you're just like, you've got this kind of cone of vision. So anything that you're not looking at is kind of grayed out and isn't an accurate representation of what's actually happening. So like things that you can only experience with like sound or whatever happening behind you, you see like smudges and like the shadows will start to sort of make weird things. And like you'll just be sat there and it will be like 5 minutes of nothing happening apart from small creaking noises and stuff. And then like you'll just hear on the door and you're just like no. And honestly, like most nights nothing happens, but you just spend the entire experience just like crawling into yourself, just hoping that nothing bad happens, bearing in mind that, you know, you've got like cobbled together defenses, you've got like a shotgun with about 2 shells in it, you're just hoping for the best that you can do something. Like I've never played a horror game that is very good at stopping the player from just feeling like they've gotten over it. Do you know what I mean? Like whenever I play games, there's always a point, especially with things like, you know, like Alien Isolation, where it was just like, okay, I've got a flamethrower now, so like, I'm not scared anymore. Like there are a lot of elements where it's like you get to a certain point in the game and you're just like, cool, this isn't really scary anymore. I don't like Darkwood. I got to the 3rd and final area, still haven't finished it because I just can't get through it. It is nerve-wracking. It is just like dread-filling. And you have like every now and again you'll have these dreams as well, and oh god, just play Darkwood.
That's part of what made the initial Amnesia game when it came out so interesting, because there is no power curve. There's you don't get a weapon. Your only verbs are continue to walk forward and hide in cabinet. Is essentially what you have. And I haven't played any of the sequels, but that was one of the things that like kept it mostly scary from like start to finish, is that you never have another answer for the thing that hunts you.
The modding scene got involved, and that was the end of that.
there's an interesting thing with Amnesia, where I think Amnesia itself was a really good game. Machine for Pigs as well, the sequel is really good.
Yes.
I don't think it's as effective as a horror game, but the actual narrative experience, like the story it tells, is really flipping good. Like it's basically like, and I don't think this is really a spoiler, like the premise is that a character finds out what's going to happen in the turn of the century in the 1800s. Like he sees all the world wars and stuff like that, and the suffering is so much for him to bear that he starts to enact something that will just stop it from happening, and you kind of you spend the game finding out, you know, what they've been doing, kind of thing. But again, it's Amnesia, right? So it's like you wake up in the middle of it, like, what the hell? But yeah, I think it did set off like a kind of crappy trend of like similar-ish games
that didn't really understand
what made it tick.
Was good. Like, they were just like, oh, you're just vulnerable, and that's what makes the game good.
After a while, when you've seen enough death screens in a horror game, you're like, okay, well, I'm invincible, right? So it's like, I'm not really that scared. Like, apart from the jump scare of being like, the thing grabbed you, it's just like, all right, it's just turned into a crap stealth game. And I remember playing, I think it was Observer, which is...
I've heard good things about that one.
Observer has some really cool stuff in it, but there is a part where it's like, there's a big monster and he's chasing you, and it's like, okay, like, you know, like, I've done this a million times now, because like Amnesia came out a decade ago. Like, I already know this loop, and you don't have good stealth mechanics, so it's not enjoyable. So you're just sort of like, okay, come on then. So I think we do need to move away from that a little bit. But
there are some. I feel like there are some games that built on that foundation quite well. Like Soma is the Soma. Like, if you've not played
Soma's great.
It's really good, but like the horror of that game isn't necessarily like, oh, the spooky monsters and stuff. Like, there are some grotesque things. It's the ideas that the ideas that it explores are genuinely very like, oh, this is horrible. Like, the things that the characters have to do. So I feel like that is a really good example of a game.
But again, I think, you know, Soma is essentially a spiritual successor to Amnesia. And I couldn't play it until I installed a mod that turned all the hostile enemies off. So I was just like, I just want to experience the story, because I don't think the gameplay is very good. Like,
no, the gameplay isn't great, but like the story and the atmosphere is very good.
But to circle all that is why I think Darkwood is so good, because like, that is a game in which you keep getting more powerful, and yet you never feel in control. It's one of the, like, the stakes keep being raised with you to a point where like you are just so stressed and so scared at all times. Like, it is the most like cohesive horror experience I think I've ever had in video games. There are a lot of fantastic horror video games, of course. There are a lot of crap ones. But yeah, let's move on to Tabletop.
I just want to do a quick shout out to a game called Laura Bow. Not Laura Bow, Frambo.
Frambo, the point and click.
Frambo, the point and click game. If you've not played that, so good.
I've watched an ex play it.
It's a game that is horror themed, but it deals with things like mental health and like childhood fears and things like that. And the art style is incredible. Please play Frambo. It's just such a... Use a walkthrough if you hate those kind of adventure games where the puzzles are really sort of like innocuous. Also play a game called Unavowed. Sorry, that's another adventure horror board game. Not board game, video game. What's wrong with me?
Unavowed,
Unavowed is also very good. Please play that.
A quick shout out to Orangaful, who is just like,
every
single thing we mentioned, she's like, yes, that one, yes, that one.
Chase!
We'll whip this up into a tabletop final with Chase Carter.
Okay, so piggybacking, I will say, just to preface all of this, I am a horror sort of spectator. I always want to get deeper into horror. I know a lot of people. I think I might enjoy listening to people discuss horror more than I enjoy watching it. Not that like I don't enjoy it, but like listening to smart people kind of break down why it is scary for them always really interests me. I'm also just a boring nerd in that way, where I love sort of like high-minded discussions of media. So it's interesting we did video games first, because I believe in tabletop RPGs, they have a similar problem to video games in that it is hard to make a truly scary experience, because you have narrative authorial agency, right? Yeah. In most games, you are playing a game, you are sort of crafting it as you go along. There are some, you have your classics, like I'm not gonna talk much about like Call of Cthulhu or Trail of Cthulhu or Cult or anything like that, because those sort of do a more of the traditional experience where the game master is given tools to create a spooky or scary game. I'm more interested in, and surprise, surprise, more of the indie games that like try to take expectations and twist them in a spooky way. the one that immediately comes to mind is like Sleepaway from J-Dragon,
Yeah.
which takes a classic setup. It's a summer camp for young children, but there is this sort of creeping dread underneath, and as you play through the game, that dread becomes less creeping and more explicit as you go through. So that one I think succeeds because it puts you in the mindset, and it gives you enough time in the game to sort of like enter the mindset, enter the sort of like theater, the imagination space of a young person with all of those fears and anxieties that go along with being someone on the cusp of teenagerhood, that change in their life, friendships, weird emotions, raging hormones, and then also a giant monster called the Lindworm that might just eat you out of existence. So it does a really nice thing of like giving the play, and I think really successful tabletop horror games give the players the tools to sort of scare themselves, which is very difficult. That's super difficult to do because one, you have to sort of expect what the players are going to do and also sort of account for all things. And just like most tabletop RPGs, it might not be successful in the first try. It might not be successful in the third try, but I believe if you have the right group and you go into it wanting to kind of experience horror in a real sort of earnest way, the games like Sleepaway and also more recently Brindlewood Bay do this sort of thing. I also really like these games like Brindlewood Bay, Sleepaway. I had another one that I was going to mention. It'll probably come to me in a second. That take, and I believe I like horror that does this too, that takes a normal setting, something that should be commonplace, and then puts shines a horror light on it so that you look at it in this new frightening way. It's why the like the home invasion movies are so popular. It takes a safe space, makes it unsafe again. What do you do if your sanctuary is invaded, is now this like this room of terrors and frights and like possible death? And I believe the best tabletop RPGs do that as well. Brindlewood Bay is all about like this little cozy seaside town, and you're a bunch of grandmas, and all of a sudden there is a cosmic horror threat that you, a grandma with no sort of like Call of Cthulhu-esque abilities, have to try to solve. That's wonderful. Like it's cute and it's charming, but it also does make you come face to face with how do you deal with horror if you are disempowered, in the sort of way that Amnesia and games like that try to do, take away all the conventional tools, the power creep, the sort of like blasted in the face sort of solutions to horror. And like, how do you face it then? We wrote, Matt Jarvis wrote a couple weeks ago about a bundle. There's a tabletop RPG Halloween Spooktacular bundle that has a few games on here that I think do a really good job of doing that. Like The Forest That Knows Your Name by Monkey Paws Games, and a few others. But then Lichcraft, that's the other one I wanted to mention. Lichcraft by Laurie O'Connell is a really great game because and I think this is another part where tabletop RPGs can really do horror well, where it allows you to experience the horror of a life that you may not live. And Lichcraft is a bit satirical, but it's all about the horror of this trans experience in a sort of like, like magical sort of like framework. And it's not something that I can speak to with any sort of agency, but reading through and playing the game, it does a really good job of conveying the sort of like mundane horror of living as a person, especially in 2021, if you're in the UK or the US, as a trans person. But it gives enough narrative tools and enough sort of genre framework for people to engage in it in a way that feels genuine and also earnest, and like you're going to come across it having learned something, which maybe it's about yourself, maybe it's about the world, maybe it's just about earning some sympathy with other people. But I really enjoyed it for that. So I guess to wrap it all up, like my favorite tabletop RPGs are the ones that like take commonplace themes, the things that you're familiar with, and makes it spooky just by like twisting the lights in the room a little bit, casting new shadows, just sort of like throw your expectations for a loop.
Can I do a few final shout outs? Just a few.
I knew it was coming.
Just a few.
Do it.
Just a crumb.
Just a little crumb. Look, when Matt and Chase are talking about anime for about 30 minutes, like, I have to sit here and just deal with it. It's my time. Watch Hush, that's on Netflix. It's really good.
Watch The Babadook.
Watch The Babadook.
Queer icon, The Babadook.
Queer icon, The Babadook. The Babadook, yeah. Hush is a home invasion film about a woman who is deaf. So it's really intense. Watch The Descent, which is an incredible horror film. Oh my god!
As
Make
Above,
sure you
So
watch.
Below is very good as well.
make sure you watch the right version of The Descent, not the. There is a very specific version with a really bad ending. You need to watch the right ending. Yeah.
Can
also,
I say, Alex, real quick?
Yeah, go.
I really like The Descent because it is one of the few horror films where everyone does the right thing.
Yeah,
But the situation
roughly.
is so crap anyway. I mean, roughly, like they're all experts, right? They're doing what they think should be okay and safe, but beyond their control, things go to crap, and they just have to deal with it from there, which I think is that's nice.
Sometimes there are situations that are so bad that regardless of who is in them, it's going to go wrong.
Yep.
Bluebeard's Bride is an incredible horror tabletop RPG.
It's on your list.
It's on my list. It's on the list. The horror RPG. I keep saying horror board game. Horror RPG list. Also Dread. I cannot express this enough. You can get Dread for free online. All you need are the Tumble Tower.
It's free real estate.
It's free real estate.
These
Please
keys are
play
for
Dread.
your house. I'm not carrying them around all day.
I'm done.
And of course, to finish it all off, for the love of God, play 10 Candles. I genuinely think it has never been matched when it comes to horror RPGs, because the way in which it uses physical atmospheres and the way in which it not only disempowers the players but physically does it over the course of the game, I think is genuinely brilliant without having to have 4 billion rules that you need to learn. It's brilliant. It's fantastic. It's one of my favorite games of all time. Right, it is 20-4. I think we will answer one question.
I'll be honest with you, we don't have that many questions. This is why I was quite happy to sort of meander for as long as I'd like. But
all right, screw it then. Well, yeah, we've got 3 here that I think we can do pretty quick. Alex, Meehan, would you like to read this question from Wayhan then?
Yeah, sure. Have you ever had players in an RPG suddenly set themselves their own challenges? For example, one of my players said they found a line in a contract they signed, meaning they had to do something. That's very interesting.
Yeah,
Mr.
absolutely.
Whelan.
I think it's I think there needs to be more of it, to be honest. I think there's a lot of games where if a player has their own personal goals, then it can feel like there are odds with what's going on, because it's like, how am I going to fit this into the big quest we're already doing or whatever. I think actually, to be honest, one thing that Heart does, which is quite cool, is at the start of every session you pick one of your characters, because you pick a class but you also pick like a sort of a goal or something. So you have like adventurer or like heart lust or whatever, and they each have their own like sort of check boxes of things that your character's trying to do, and you pick 2 of them at the start of the session, and then you all just announce them, and it's like, here is the thing I want to do this session, so everyone knows like, okay, cool, this is the goal that we're trying to tell as a story, which I think is really cool. And I think Blades does it quite cool as well, where it's just like, the GM doesn't decide on an adventure, the players decide what they want to do next. Like I think there needs to be more of that in tabletop games. But I will throw it to you two as well.
I have a situation. I'm gonna put my brother on blast. A few years ago, when we were playing D&D. Yeah, he was playing like a Blade Master or Samurai, some class like that. And for whatever reason, when he started, he was just like, if I ever accidentally kill something that I didn't want to, I'm going to try to take my own life. And it just caused a bunch of stress for the party. It was maybe not the best decision. It did lead to some interesting role play, but he really, for whatever reason, just very much doubled and then tripled down on like, I am just like the most self-sacrificing dude with a sword ever, and like found a reason to just like try to be his own tragic hero at every turn. And God bless him, but it made everybody mad. Nobody like that.
I like that we got the two ends of the spectrum there. Yeah. Player empowerment and player piss-offament.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah. I mean, I've been involved in a lot of chaotic RPG playthroughs. Naturally, as part of Dicebreaker, chaos tends to be the way things can turn sometimes, which can be great. I personally prefer the kind of what do you want to call them? Why can't I remember anything? The kind of detours that are like driven by a motivation, or by like a character's personality, or by their like, my character will do this, not necessarily because it's logical, but because this is what they would do. Like, I feel like I would rather roleplay than service metagaming. I'm not a huge fan of metagaming. Although I feel like people can take it too far. I feel like some people just do it just to annoy other people, or just to be like, I'm doing this and you can't stop me, and if you try and stop me, then like I'm going to really mess with your whole shtick. I feel like that's not very nice with role-playing games, because it should be a collaborative experience in terms of
Cut
we all
those
want to
people
have
out of your life.
yeah, we all want to tell a good story. We don't want stop like playing up for attention. Essentially, feels like a lot.
Yeah.
Of,
Have a session 0, you know? Talk about player expectations before you get started.
Yeah, exactly. Like, definitely have your character do things because they're driven by a thing in their backstory. This is something, or a aspect of their personality. Like, this is something, as long as their personality is not just complete garbage that you've made up just to annoy people. Like, definitely do that, because that is worth time, because ultimately a role-playing campaign shouldn't just be like, we're doing this epic adventure and that is it. It should also be like, these characters are developing and changing as people. There are arcs to this. Yeah, I mean, I like to do that when I'm developing relationships with other characters in the story. Like, I like to be like, oh yeah, we're going to talk about this. Like, we're going to go off to this pub because you wanted to do this thing, or like, yeah, there's definitely room for it. There you go. Shall we move on to the next question?
Yeah, let your players be the main character for a bit, you know? Like, let them have their own thing, and then, you know, it's not going to stop everything else going on. And I think if you're one of the other players, rather than thinking, oh, we have to wait for 20 minutes because this person's doing their thing.
Just listen.
Just either listen or just, like, help them out, you know? Like, just, like, help them tell that story. Do interesting things that help play into it, you know? But our second question, Chase, you've got the doc open. Would you like to read this one from the 4 Toasty?
Yeah. Any of you played Mancala?
Nope.
That's the whole thing.
No, played Mancala?
I've not.
Nope.
I have.
Tell us,
bro.
about
Are you
Chase.
kidding? That was the game to play in like early grade school, like 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. So
is this the one where you have the fist of things and you drop them as you go?
Yeah. So you have the board. It's sort of like this long rectangular board, and it opens up, and it's got like I can't remember how many, but it's got like 6 or 7 like little divots on each side, and then a big divot pool on each edge. And there's like these little stones. You can use rocks. We use these like little glass beads that were like flattened on one side. And basically what you do is you start from a certain pool and you pick up all of the gems or stones that are in that pool, and then you start from the right and you drop one in each little divot, and you go around the board until you run out. And then the next player takes their turn, and they get to choose which divot they want to start, and they pick them up. The goal is to get if I can remember correctly, is to get all of your stones from one side to the other. You want to get all of them. The goal is either to get rid of all your stones or to amass all the stones. And so there's this like guessing game of like how they distribute as you go around the board. It's very simple concept. It's like one of those games that I feel like one of those classic board games that once you kind of know the math that's behind it, you can kind of game it. But for little kids who are just sort of playing, it can easily take up an hour. And so, yeah, we had Mancala boards in our public school library, and as soon as there was like a free period, everybody would be rushing to the library, not to read books, but to grab those Mancala boards.
Really?
And sit in the corner.
That's really interesting.
And pick up stones. Yeah. It was a big deal. I don't know if like for whatever reason we had them, but it was just super popular at our school. Yeah, I honestly, I love Mancala. It's super simple. You can teach the rules in 5 minutes. A 5-year-old can learn how to play it and can go nuts. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Our final question then is from Kay Collier, who asks, you have to play a game against death to save your life. What game do you choose? Do you know what? I'm not even going to ask for an explanation. Just want you all to name the game, and then we're gonna call it that. Meehan?
Not very good at anything.
Well, tough luck, I guess.
I'm not good at games, so I'm basically dead. Monica's, because I want to see what death looks like pretending to be a Roomba or something.
That's very good.
Yeah,
That's
I like
a good
the
choice.
idea that it's just like, look, I'm not going to win, so.
Yeah, I just want my last experience on Earth. Wayhan Lim says Happy Salmon.
Happy Salmon. Oh my god. I wouldn't trust myself to win Happy Salmon.
But again, I would love to see Death play Happy
Yeah.
Salmon. I would love to.
I think slapping against that bony arm would kind of ruin the Happy Salmon itself, to be honest. So I feel like Death should then be disqualified for not doing a satisfying enough Happy Salmon, and I win.
Oh, you win on those grounds. Okay. What other? Come on. What?
I think I'm very good at Cube Quest, and I do think that if I had to, I could probably play against Death for my life. Although he has got those bony fingers, so I'm sure he could get a lot of power in his shots. But that is my go-to. Chase, have you?
But no eyeballs.
No eyeballs as well, yeah. So
How can he aim?
Yeah.
can't poke him in the eye.
Mine would be Cornhole or Horseshoes. One of the two.
What's Cornhole again?
It's the one with beanbags where you have the two boards on either side and you try to like toss it into the hole.
Right. Okay.
a southern U.S. regional classic.
Yeah,
It's
we
very
don't know
bad.
what-
Cornhole. So
Yeah.
Listen, get me a couple of drinks in on like a summer evening, and Death is going to eat dirt all day long.
in our a couple of drinks in, just a couple of beanbags in hand.
Yeah.
In the Dicebreaker lounge, Chase is winning it all. But there it is.
Yeah, Orangerful asks, when will the Dicebreaker store be reopened? I want to ask for DB merch for Christmas. Do you know the answer to this question?
Is it
Is
not
it closed?
open? I feel like
Do you have the right link, Orangeful? Because we did change where we did change where it's
yeah, I'm gonna click on a video
where our
and
merch
click on
is.
the
Have
link.
you put the right link in, Mr. Wheeler, for the merch?
Dicebreaker merch. Here we go. Store.repop.com. Yeah, coming soon. Oh man. Well.
Oh no.
Yeah,
sorry.
we don't really manage the merch. We just kind of get
Yeah.
told what's going on, and
We
get
can
asked for
we can
ideas,
find
so-
out for you and we'll let you know.
Yeah, we'll do our best.
'Cause,
But
if you want merch, we want you to get it.
we want you to
so-
be able to buy it. I'm afraid I don't know much about that, but I will endeavour to find out for you. But regardless, thank you very much, everyone, for watching the Dicebreaker podcast. It was a long one, but I mean, we were talking about horror, and we all love horror here, so it was always going to happen. This has been the live recording here of the Dicebreaker podcast. Happens every Friday at 2 p.m. BST on youtube.com/Dicebreaker. If you haven't already, please do hit the subscribe button, click the bell icon to get notified whenever we put a new video live. And you can also just give this video a like as well, because it helps with the old algorithm. Maybe leave a comment after we're done. You can find more of Chase and me going on over to the channel, and hitting the join button there. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you soon. Sorry, I don't know what's going on with the merch, but we'll find it out for the next one, hopefully. Have a very, very lovely day. A big thank you to both of our guests for joining us as well. And we'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.
Bye.